Rev up your engines!
Well, automakers now are cautiously optimistic about the coming year because 2022 was the worst that they've had in a long time. The lowest level of sales since 2011 when people were recovering from the Great Recession, as they call it, right? Now, overall in the United States, it's an 8 to 9% decline in sales of new cars. Some people hit harder than others. Honda, for example, was down 29.4%. GM actually gained 2.5%. So on average, the lowest since the Great Recession. Now, the thing is, yes, the sales numbers are down, but their profits were actually up because if you tried to buy a new car, they didn't charge MSRP. They added thousands on top of it. So they actually made more money than they ever made by screwing us consumers over. We can't sell as many, so we'll just jack up the price, right? Just realize this. You don't have to buy a new car. Your old car can probably still last a while. It's not like groceries. You know, you're hungry, you need food, you're going to buy groceries. So the clowns at the grocery stores can rip you off all they want because they know you're going to eat and you're going to spend money on it, right? You don't have to buy a new car if your old car's still rolling down the road. Cars can last a really long time. They didn't sell as many, but they jacked the price up so they actually have a higher profit margin. Now, Toyota and GM say they expect a 9% increase this year. They're going to be building more cars, less of the chip shortage, and they're getting things back together where they can build more cars. Don't let the figures fool you as much as they are because they're always looking for a year that sounds like the max. But let's say they sold 14 million cars last year. They're estimating 13.9, 14 million. Okay. You go back to the Great Recession, 2009, they only sold 10 million cars. That is a big difference. Because even if they only sold 14 million cars, take 2019. So they sold 17 million cars. That's 15 to 17. That's a far cry from 10 million to 17 million. Now, these guys, a lot of times, they're nitpicking, trying to make something look bigger than it is, picking certain years. You might always wonder, why did they pick that year? Well, because that year would give them a bigger differential than the year before, maybe even 6 months before, 6 months after, and try to make the jump look bigger or smaller, depending on which side they are. So a lot of these figures, they're still selling millions and millions of cars at a tremendous profit for the corporation. So it's not like these companies are going bankrupt. Then they whine about a few percentages here and there. The funniest thing of it all is one of these analysts finally told the truth. The guy's name is Chesbro. He's an analyst. And here's what he says. They should say this all the time because it's the truth. This is one of those rare times when we really have no idea which direction the market could go. Well, I agree with that, except you shouldn't say this is the one time. This is almost every time. They have no idea what anything is happening. They just ride the wave like everybody else, you know. These economists, they don't know what the heck's going on half the time. The famous economist Keynes, right? One time somebody asked him, what about the long term? And what did he say? In the long term, we're all dead. So what does it matter, right? These guys are just guessing like everybody else. Or this time he says, this is one of the few times we have no idea which way the market's going. They never have any idea what the market's going. They just jump on the bandwagon and hope. Well, Tesla's crapping in their pants, even lowering their prices of cars in China. But here's the thing. They're still ripping off Americans. This is unbelievable. Look at this. Tesla just lowered their price, and for their Model Y, it was lowered down to $37,830 in China. Right? That's in China. But why are they ripping the Americans off? Well, what does a Model Y cost now? They start at $67,440. That's almost $68,000. Something is amiss here. What? He's ripping us Americans off and giving the Chinese consumers a deal? Hey, imagine. Well, you dumb Americans, you can pay 68 grand, but the Chinese, hey, they're smarter. It's kind of unbelievable that there's that much of a price differential between what he charges the Chinese for the same Model Y car as he does here in the United States and Canada. Right? It's even higher in Canada because they have bigger taxes. But I mean, it's almost twice the price here as it is in China. So, hey, what's going on with this company? What other companies in the world? You buy a washing machine in the United States, but, you know, the same one in China costs half of what it costs here? It doesn't make any sense. It's the same company, the same car, right? Hey, people need to start looking at old Elon, how he's ripping everybody off. I couldn't believe it when I looked it up. I thought, you know, I know they're going to be cheaper in China, right? But 30 grand, almost half the price is what they're charging here. And that's the list price, too. That isn't what they actually go for. They usually try to get them a lot higher up. What is going on? We're charging all that much money for us Americans, but in China, he's giving them a better deal. It could be the end of Tesla's coming. People are maybe realizing maybe it wasn't such a good idea to make expensive, poorly built electric cars. Randy Pablo says, I bought my first Akabono brake pad you recommend. Is it okay to install them over slightly worn grooves in them, or is it best to play it safe? Well, the thing is, those are great pads. And ages ago, one of my mechanic friends who died years ago, by the matter of fact, Mike, the mechanic, he had a guy, and the guy was cheap. He said, I'm selling this thing, and I got grooves all over my rotors on my Ford here, but I don't want to buy rotors. So Mike says, well, we'll put Akabono pads. He did. They didn't make any noise, and he sold the vehicle. Now, if they have slight grooves on them, they will wear a little faster. If you don't want to spend money on that, go right ahead. It's not going to really hurt anything. You step, it's not going to be shaking. Akabono pads are really good pads, ceramic. Make sure you get the ceramic ones, but I wouldn't particularly worry about it. Now, if you're the type of person like me, you keep a car forever, what the heck, I'd put new rotors on anyway, because, hey, I want those to last as long as possible and not have to worry about things shaking. I'd just go ahead and replace them when I did the job. Jeff P. says, Scotty, got an 05 Pontiac Vibe, 188,000. I opened the radiator cap, was cold, and the coolant squirted out. Any thoughts? Here's what you want to do, and this test will prove yay or nay. I'm talking cold. Let it sit all night. First thing in the morning, start the car up. Take the radiator cap off immediately. And if it starts squirting out, you got a blown head gasket. You could start a car with no coolant in it at all, and nothing's going to happen for minutes for it to overheat the engine. And you're full of coolant. If you start it and immediately it starts shooting out when the engine's ice cold, you got a blown head gasket. That's the only thing that can do that. Now, if you want to make positive that's what it is, you can watch my video, How to Tell If Your Head Gasket's Blown, Scotty, on YouTube. Watch that. Buy the little kit for $30. If the blue liquid turns yellow, indeed, you have a blown head gasket, and I can just about guarantee you have one if you open it when it's cold and it comes flying out, if you let it sit overnight. St. Ranger says, Scotty, what's the most expensive car you ever worked on? Well, you're not going to believe this because it's totally insane, but it was a piece of junk. English Ford. The door was smashed in. It looked like garbage, and you'd think, why is it the most expensive car you ever worked on? Well, it turns out that this old English Ford was the last car one of the popes drove before he became pope. And they called it the Pope Mobile, the guys who owned it, right? Well, that thing went for like $1.4 million. That's an ugly looking thing. It was a rolling pile of junk, but a pope owned it, the last car he drove before he was pope. So it had sentimental value, and it went for that kind of money. Some of the oddest things go for the most amount of money. That's just, the way that stuff goes. When you get into high dollar cars, it isn't necessarily the car. It's the ambience that comes with it. Here's the last car that this guy drove himself. Here's the last car that this person, Elvis owned this motorcycle, and then it'll go for $1 million something, right? That's generally what happens with really high dollar cars. Aji says, would the right to repair bill help EVs, or would it still be crap? Depends on who's building them, right? We need all the information we can get to fix something, because if we can't get the information, then we're all screwed. You can't fix it yourself. As an independent mechanic, I can't fix it myself because I don't have the data. Now, there's plenty of companies out there. I got tool companies, and they're now sending me tools that work on electric vehicles because they're all coming out with them, right? But if they're not allowed to get that information, then everyone is screwed. The funny thing is, though, people like me will get the information before a lot of other places will, because companies send me stuff, and I tell them, look, I don't do paid advertising. You send me the stuff, I'll try it out. If it's good, I'll show people, right? So I get a bunch of Chinese stuff. Well, a bunch of this Chinese stuff, I'm about 100% sure that most of it is stolen software, right? But if it works, who cares? I'm fixing a car, and I'm using it to analyze car problems. So, with all the companies in the United States trying to stop all these laws from being passed because they want to keep all the repair money to themselves, the Chinese will get that information, and they'll sell it to people in machines, and people will buy it here. And it's so complex. In the past, before I was a YouTuber, I would buy machines like that made in China, but I'd buy them from like Ohio Tool Man. Guy would get it from China. I'd buy it in the United States legal, and I'd use it to fix cars. I really don't care where the information comes from if I'm fixing somebody's car, right? Trying to save people money, do it the best way. So they think they can stop people by making laws that, you can't get this. We're not going to let these repair bills. And New York State just signed one into law, and guess what? By the time that Governor of New York signed it, it was so watered down, it was meaningless. They put all these loopholes in it. For the safety of people, we're not giving them this information. Total BS. So EVs, some cars might be really well made, some cars might be crappy made. We still need information regardless. The overall picture of EV cars, of course, we don't know how long the batteries will last, how much it'll cost to charge them up. Is there going to be an infrastructure for millions of people to be able to charge them up? Or, are you going to be waiting like People were in London this Christmas for 5-6 hours to even get to plug yours in before you charge it up because the wait line was so long. Who knows about that? But we do need the information. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.